Good morning, y'all. Welcome to another video on the Luderco Arms channel. So in the ongoing effort to get my old XJ here to run like it's got a big 4-liter 6-cylinder instead of a 4-cylinder. So it doesn't, I mean, it starts up and runs. It doesn't seem to be missing or running rough or anything, but this thing just has no power. And I know that the 4-liter is considered kind of a dog, but I figure I'm going to make every effort to make this thing run as good as it can. And the biggest problem I'm having is around town it does great, but when you get out on the interstate, and around here we've got some hills and such, and man, it's terrible. It's got the downshift out of overdrive to make it up a hill, and I mean, it's just screaming. It's like it's got no torque whatsoever. And you know, it may just be an issue of it's a 1998 and things just weren't as good back then, but it just seems to me that it ought to do better than that, especially since, yeah, I know I've got 35-inch tires, but I've also got 488 gears. This thing ought to pull up a hill. It shouldn't be dying. I mean, it's pitiful, to the point where I would not make any long distance trip on an interstate in this thing, because it's just terrible the way the thing it'll go. When you get on the interstate, there's a hill near my work, and it's right after you get on the interstate, so you're screaming anyways because you're trying to accelerate up. You get up to about 70 miles an hour and you're in overdrive and you're spinning, I don't know, 2,800 2,700 RPM, and you hit this hill and you start pushing the pedal down to try to keep your speed up, and you just don't, until the speed will drop down to like 63 miles an hour, and it'll drop out of overdrive into third gear and be screaming at like 3,500 RPM. Maybe that's normal, I don't know. This is the only Jeep I've ever owned. I know my 69 Scout, and granted it's got a 345 cubic inch V8, but it's not a high rever, but it'll make it up that hill at like 2,500 RPM all day long, pulling still. So I don't know, but what are we doing today? We're going to replace some sensors. So in a previous video, I already replaced the crankshaft position sensor, so that part's done. So we're going to replace the other 3 sensors on the motor. So we've got throttle position sensor. This is a Mopar, and I couldn't get a Mopar for these other 2, but you got the intake air temperature sensor and the idle air control valve. So where these are located, it's up here on top of your motor. So this is your intake air temperature sensor right here. Just screws into the intake, and then the other 2 screw into the throttle body. So this one here is a throttle position sensor, and this one is fairly new. I'm going to keep it for a spare, but it's not a Mopar, it's a Dorman TPS, and from what I've read, the Mopar is the way to go with these things. And then this right here in the back is the idle air control valve. So now I don't have any symptoms that would lead me to believe that these are bad, other than just a lack of power. But from what I've read online, a lot of these sensors can go bad without setting a check engine light, because there's no check engine light on. But I figure, other than that TPS, which I did replace once before, and it's, like I said, it's just not a Mopar, so we're going to replace it again. Hell, these things are 26 years old, so it can't hurt to replace them. Even if they're not showing bad, they have to have had some degradation, however you would say that, over the time that they've been in here. So first we're going to do throttle position sensor. So get up in here. You can see it's got a plug on it, which you just squeeze the tab. And pull it off of there. And then it's got two Torx screws in it. And they're like T20 is what they are. And so I got my little socket here, and I will try to see around the camera. Now we can see. I gotta take this extension off for these ones. That's broke loose. Once you get the two little screws out, you just pull it out of there. Now this new one comes with new screws. So we will put the screws in it, the new screws. And you just set it down in here and get it kind of got to move it around and get it started on there. Get the screws all started in finger make sure before you go tightening them up that you're not cross-threaded. Alright, and alright. Now I just ran them up with that. I'm going to check and make sure they're tight with my little ratchet. That one's good. It's good. And you just plug it back in and you're good. So that's it for the throttle position sensor. Now we will move on to the idle air control valve, which is right here, stuck in the side of there. And I do believe that the screws are the same size. So let me set this TPS over here. And it's basically the same thing. You squeeze the tab, pull the wiring connector off of it, which can be a pain in the behind, being as long as this thing's been on here. Pop that off, kind of get it over here out of the way, and then the screws on it use the same size Torx bit as the TPS. Sorry about that. Alright, so got those broke loose, and let me get my ratchet here. Alright, let's move y'all for a second. Gotta get my screw. I dropped it right there on the intake. Alright, you get the two screws out of her, and then she comes right off, just like so. So, looking at this, that's got quite a bit of gunk built up on it. We'll get our new one. And you can see how much cleaner the new one is compared to the old one. So let's get it stuck in the hole there. It's got a new O-ring on it. Okay, old O-ring is off of on there still. So let's put this new one in. And you want it kind of set up the same way as when you pulled it off, so you know which way your electrical part was facing. And we'll start this top screw back in here. Now this did not come with new screws like the TPS did, so we'll just reuse the old ones. And the bottom one is going to be kind of a pain in the behind. I tell you one thing, you don't realize it when you watch videos on YouTube how hard it is to do work around a camera. Try to do is get this on here. Show y'all a little secret. These Torx bits, if you need to stick it on the end of something, you stick your little bit of gum on there, and that'll help stick it on the end of your tool so that you can get it up into its hole there. And try to get it started by hand up in there. You don't want to cross thread these, because you don't want to have to replace your throttle body, gosh damn it, over a stripped out screw. Now that we got them both started by hand, we can just run them the rest of the way up with the ratchet. And then just double check that they're tight with your ratchet, because like I said, I don't generally like to run these up tight with that power ratchet, because you know, this little plastic and aluminum crap is not going to stand up to much abuse. So we got that on there, and now we just plug it back in like so, and that's good. So now the only one we've got left is this right here, which is our air intake temperature. So we'll pop that off and get our socket here. So this is a a 19 millimeter will fit right down on that thing, and you can I would suggest a 6-point as opposed to a 12-point, because the brass body of this thing will strip pretty quick if it's good and tight in there. Anyways, we just unscrew that, and you can see it's got quite a bit of filthiness on it there. And we'll get our new part here. And you can see how nice and clean it is. So we'll just go right here and stick it in the hole. And then tighten it on down. Now, because this thing, it's just a sensor, you don't have to try to put 100 foot-pounds of torque on it, because one, it ain't gonna take it, but you got to put enough torque on it to make it seal. So once you got it good and tight in there, you just try to spin that around just a little bit more so it lines up well with my electrical connector. There we go. All right. So that is replacing pretty much all of the sensors that are up on top of the intake. We did our throttle position sensor, our intake air control valve, and also the intake air temperature sensor. And if you need to see the crankcase position sensor, look back in the old videos, it's in there. We did that a while back. So let's grab all the tools off of here real quick and make sure this thing will fire up, which it should, because it was fine before. All right, that's that. So if you need to do this yourself, the parts are so for the intake air temperature was AX49 standard motor parts, and the idle air control valve was an AC176 standard. I would rather have got the Mopar parts, but No place I deal with has them. The only Mopar part that I could get was that throttle position switch or sensor, and it's right there. 6843-3984 AA-001. So I would rather put Mopar parts on there when you can get them, but a lot of this stuff you can't get anymore. At least not around where I live. So, appreciate y'all watching and supporting the channel. Hopefully this helped somebody out. And we'll see you in the next video. Y'all have a good one.